Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and we go over the week's events in the world of Scientology, as reported on Tony's Substack, address right there on the screen. You can see it. Tony, welcome back to the show.
Weird week, Chris. It's a hangover for late summer, but the fall hasn't really started yet. So weird stuff.
Yeah, it is a little bit odd this week. Interesting stuff, starting, of course, with 20th anniversary, Shelley Miscavige, last appearance in public. What's the rundown on this? I mean, we haven't talked about it before.
Right, we've talked about it before, but my sources who were actually there at the time at Int Base have told me over the years that it was late August or early September 2005. Not 2006, as you hear from some reports. It's just not right. It was late August or early September 2005 when Shelly Miscavige grabbed a car from the motor pool and made a desperate attempt to drive to LA and save her marriage. And that was the last time she was ever seen at Int Base. So I thought it was worth pointing out that that is 20 years ago this week that Shelly Miscavige vanished. Now, just shortly after that, the people that were working at Int Base could see that her mail was then being forwarded to the CST headquarters, Twin Peaks, which is up near Lake Arrowhead. It's a much smaller compound. So she was at Int Base, which had several hundred Sea Org workers. It was a very secretive place, but it had several hundred workers. That's where the hole was, which had started just the year before. And if Shelley was there, people would see her. She went from there to a little mountain compound with maybe only 12 or 15 people. That's the headquarters of this very secretive subsidiary called Church of Spiritual Technology. Their job is to dig these vaults and store L. Ron Hubbard's writings and lectures in there to survive civilization collapse. There's several vaults in California and New Mexico, but this one near Lake Arrowhead, the San Bernardino Mountains, is the headquarters. It's got more of a little plant there where they're doing the work of actually creating this media that's supposed to last thousands of years. Scientology TV actually did an episode about it, and you can see the workers in their clean room outfits, making these discs and stuff like that. That's where Shelley has been for the last 20 years. All right. Yes, she's been seen outside of it. A couple years later, in 2007, her father, Barney Barnett, died. And Shelley was allowed to go to his funeral, which took place on a boat in San Pedro Harbor. Now, the way we know that is that Shelley's sister, Suzette, at the time was living with Mark and Claire Headley. And so it was Suzette who came back from the funeral and said Shelley was there. And she reported that she was there with a handler. It turns out that Shelley was sent to Twin Peaks, this little compound, with two other women. Her handler, this woman, Ann Joachim, who was Ann Rathbun for a while, and another woman named Antonella Tizzi, who's her Scientology auditor. So these women make sure that, Shelley is hopped up on Scientology and never leaves. But she was allowed to go to the funeral as long as Ann Joachim went with her. And at one point, Shelley got away from Ann long enough to go to the bathroom and say to her sister very quickly, "I'm in trouble. I can't help you anymore." And I think that's so, and she came back and told Mark and Claire this. Now, I think this is hugely significant. It shows that in 2007, 2 years after her disappearance, Shelley knew that she was a prisoner. And I think she's still a prisoner today. A year later, in 2008, Mitch Brisker, the film director for Scientology, spotted her with her handlers in Redlands, down from the mountain. A woman in Crestline, who lives just a mile from the compound, thinks she saw Shelley in town with handlers in just 2015 and 2016. And those are the only sightings that I've really feel fairly confident in. I know there's some others people have said. I haven't seen any real evidence of it. The other interesting piece of data, and there are public records that tie Shelley to the Twin Peaks compound, okay? But there are some other interesting public documents that came out just very recently, and that was she registered to vote at one of the other CST locations, the one in Petrolia, California, that's way up by the Oregon border. But according to her voter records, she didn't vote. She hasn't voted since the 90s. So I think what happened was she got her driver's license renewed, and there was a motor voter thing, and it renewed her registration. And she happened to be up at Petrolia at the time. I don't think she spent much time there. The problem with the other CST locations, like people will always bring up New Mexico, is that these other CST locations, there's a vault, there's a house, there's one or two caretakers, and that's it. And that's just not the place to store Shelley Miscavige. You put her at the headquarters where there's 12 or 15 people. They're actually doing work. They have stuff for her to do.
Yep.
So she may have spent some time at Petrolia, but my sources tell me they really think she's still mainly at Twin Peaks and has been there now for 20 years. And I really do think she's a prisoner. Yes, I understand there's some ex-Scientologists that remember when she was running Scientology with Dave and she could be a tough taskmaster. And I get that. I understand there's still some bad feelings all these years later. But 20 years? There are some murderers who don't spend 20 years in prison. So, I mean, Shelley might have been rude. Shelley might have been ruthless, back in the 80s and 90s, but she's been in prison for 20 years. And what's really sad is that at some point, her sisters lost all communication with her. Initially, when she was up there, she was allowed to communicate with the sisters. Not anymore. No communication, no visits. We also know that when she was at Imp Base, she was a huge dog lover and had 6 beagles at any time. And if one of them died, they'd replace it. She always had 6 beagles. She doesn't have dogs up at Twin Peaks. You know what that's like for a dog person? Oh my God. Why and
Absolutely.
why? Scientology's lame excuses. She's on a special work project. Oh, come on. Dave doesn't trust her and decided to make her an unperson. He does this with other people that have been disappeared over the years. And John Brousseau put it best. John Brousseau, who was David Miscavige's brother-in-law for 16 years, married to Shelley's sister, he said, Dave will keep her where she is until she dies.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think it's worth bringing up on the 20th anniversary. I think Leah Remini still cares a lot about what happened to Shelley, and Leah would be happy to welcome Shelley into her home if she wanted to. Why can't Shelley Miscavige visit her friend Leah Remini? What's Scientology's excuse for that? It's garbage. So I don't know. I am passionate about this, Chris. It's a story I've been writing about for 13 years now, and it's a story that I'm going to keep watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth watching because it's representative of the bigger problem. As you mentioned just now, David Miscavige has disappeared a number of people and he sends them in different places all around the world. I watched him do it. It's not like this is a controversial point or my opinion. I watched him do it. I watched him send people to Australia, to the UK, to Copenhagen, because he wanted them away from him, where he would never have to lay his eyes on them again, and where they could still be kept an eye on, where he wasn't letting them go and kicking them out of the Sea Org, because he needed or wanted them to still be in his controlled environment. And that's the key to understanding the entire Sea Org operation, is that it is a tightly controlled environment. And that's not symbolic. That's not hyperbolic. I'm not exaggerating the point. And there is nowhere that is more controlled than places like Gold Base and the CST facilities, the Church of Spiritual Technology, where Shelley is. There are cameras all over the place. There are guards. There are gates. It's all locked up. And as we say with the Scientology security forces that exist in Clearwater and in Los Angeles, they don't just keep an eye on external threats. 90% of the security force's job, according to the church instructions, is to watch the staff, look inward. They're watching for the staff. So there's a whole, in other words, there's all these mechanisms and things in place that really do make this a prison. I just wanted to say all this to reinforce
Oh yeah,
what you
and
were
I've
saying.
had multiple independent confirmations that they keep armed guards across the street from where Shelley is to make sure she doesn't go anywhere.
My point. Exactly my
Why would you
point.
do that if she wasn't a prisoner? You know?
Exactly. That is a prison system situation. You then, as we talk about on this channel for years, use a number of thought reform and indoctrination and social pressure techniques to force the person psychologically to keep themselves in place too. And having been in it for 27 years and doing the full RPF program and all that, I know up close and personal what that feels like and how hard it is to extract yourself from it. It's, y'all out there watching this know far more about the situation than Shelley does
Yeah.
or other Scientologists do. So when you look into this world from, keep that perspective in mind that you know a lot more than they do. So, when you question, well, why doesn't she just leave? Or why don't they, as though it's so simple, maybe pull back and look at why it's not so simple. The other point I want to make up today on this, because it comes up often enough, is one of the most difficult points of cult recovery and analysis is that victim victimizer role that all cult members play. Everybody in a cult is a victim of the cult. It's a designed con or system to fool you. Yet at the same time as people rise in the ranks in these groups, they also become victimizers and they actually victimize other people. It's all part of the systemic process of being in a cult. And I'm not suggesting that it's all just forgive and forget. What I'm trying to make the point of is that if you're a real person really thinking about this in any kind of serious way, then you understand how complicated it is. And you don't just take people in a cult and go, well, they're just a bunch of abusers and, and they are life unworthy of life or some nonsense, right? And people can go in that direction. I've seen them do it. So I wanted to make that point today because I rarely do make that point when it comes to this issue or with Shelley, but it needs to be said more often, is that yes, she victimized people. She absolutely did that. But she's also a lifelong victim of Scientology and never had any options or choices to do anything other than what she's doing. So we can look at that and look at her. And from all of that perspective is why she's sort of our poster child for the Scientology abuses that exist to this day.
Yep.
All right. So there's my soapboxing about Shelley for the 20th of this. Moving on, we have this ongoing IAS event. The date is, well, this is the thing. What is the date?
Yeah, what is the date? So, this is one of the big days on the Scientology calendar every year. It's usually in October. The International Association of Scientologists is Scientology's membership organization, and they have their annual gala in a big tent on the grounds of Saint Hill Manor in East Grinstead, England. And the last 2 years, well, they took it off for the pandemic, obviously, for a couple of years, but the last 2 years since they've brought it back, Alex Barnes Ross has been out in front protesting. Well, one of the things he learned was that he was very meticulous looking at all the permissions and things like that. He realized Scientology had never actually applied for a permit to put up such a big tent, and
Oops.
you can confirm with the local council that yeah, they can't put up a tent that big without permission. I mean, it's a big deal putting up something that large.
Yeah.
And what Scientology tried to do was several months ago they had a lawyer go in and say, look, we put this thing up every year for 20 years. It's the same as a permanent structure. Let's just grandfather it in. The council was saying, no, it's not. You put it up, you take it down. It's not a permanent building. So they said no. And so Scientology just has not applied for a permit, but they're building the tent anyway. So, okay, the October's coming up quick. When is the date? Well, nobody knows. In fact, what was funny this week is they had the Jive Aces, their, swing band that's been around forever, made up of Sea Org members. They put out this cute little video saying, save the date, and it's a very clever little video, goes on for about a minute and a half. It's very fun. They're very good musicians. They never say the date. So how are you supposed to save the date if you don't know what the date is? So it just shows that there's this strange showdown coming in the next couple of weeks in England between Dave, his stubbornness about not revealing the date, his stubbornness in putting up a tent he has no permission for, and what are the local officials going to do? Because now they can't pretend that they don't know what's going on. But Alex Barnes Ross has made them very aware of it. So I don't know. It's all kind of very entertaining situation to me. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
Me too. It's really just kind of like, okay. I mean, it's, it's putting up a tent. This is a fairly low stakes, situation in the bigger picture of stuff. But at the same time, it's just so representative of Scientology's fuck you attitude toward the whole world, right? They just don't care what anybody else thinks. They're going to do what they're doing. And they'll come in with some emergency pitch or something. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. You know what I mean? Ah, right. We'll see. We'll see what the council does. What they're do we know? Let me because we make this mistake sometimes with Clearwater City Council too. With what they can and can't really do. What kind of powers do they have? It's not like these folks are gonna perp walk the Sea Org execs into jail or something if they continue on with this building. It's a fine, right? That's what they would get.
I mean, Alex has talked about that they do have the power to send some bulldozers over there if they really want to.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. It would be interesting if they decided to flex their muscle. That would make this very interesting. I
I
guess
mean,
I'm
because
so
it
used to.
probably will end up with fines. I mean, think about Clearwater. You mentioned Clearwater. I remember when they wanted to put up something and there was some old oak trees in the way, which in
Yes.
Florida, those are precious. You don't they take forever to grow and they're very rare. And Scientology just figured it was in their interest to chop the damn thing down and pay a $2,000 fine,
Yep.
that was easier for them than to think about the community and their and what they thought of that tree. So, that's the kind of thing they would do is they'll go ahead and put oh, you want to fine us 10,000 for putting up a tent? Go ahead. You know,
Exactly.
not
That
even that's not even Dave's lunch, scotch bill.
budget exactly. And that is the other approach is they could just be in silent treatment to the council now. It could just be, okay, whatever. You guys are going to do whatever you're going to do. Maybe they don't come in with any emergency thing. Maybe they just, it's kind of like Dave's sort of treating Clearwater a bit right now. Like, okay, I'm above you people. I'm just going to have the, attorney general for the state send my communications to you now, right? Maybe it's going to be that kind of flavor of thing in the UK. Well, I guess we'll see. There's not really anybody on Scientology's side in the UK like they get in Florida though. We don't know of any attorney general type person or lord or something like that who's on Scientology's side over there, do we?
No, I haven't. I mean, there in the past there have been members of parliament who spoke up for Scientology, but not for a long, long time. And
Yeah.
they've got some very energetic attorneys over there who work very hard for them. But I don't know. I can't think of a Pam Bondi or
Yeah.
over there right now. So I don't know how that's going to work out.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. An interesting omission on their part that Miscavige is probably a little pissed about. Like, where's the Pam Bondi for the UK? Come on, guys. Like, what the hell? What have you guys been doing all these years? You know? Okay, interesting stuff. Now, John Travolta was made an appearance on the Substack this week. What was this about?
Well, Hello Magazine really had me going because Hello Magazine reported that Travolta had put up his Ocala house for sale for $10 million. Now that house is really quite unique. It's basically a mini airport is what it is.
Right, right.
It was built in 2003 to his specifications in Kelly Preston, and they moved in, and he could park his planes right there in the front yard, and it was in this jumbo layer neighborhood where they all share the biggest private runway in the country.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, and he had a 707 that had been a Qantas plane that was his perfect, private plane. And so it was surprising to hear that he was putting it up for 10 million. And then Hello was saying, well, Kelly died. And so probably the place is sad for him, blah, blah, blah. Well, their source, though, was this Instagram post.
Oh,
And it was clearly one of these like luxury property porn kind of counts that post this mansion and post that mansion. And yeah, the headline said that it had been listed for 10 million, but then if you read the little article on the Instagram, it said that it's been valued at 10 million. That's not the same thing.
That's right.
So I was a little suspicious, and I went and I looked, and I looked up that specific property on Zillow, Redfin, and Trulia. All three of them said not on the market. Not only is it not on the market, but it's worth about 3.6 million. They estimate, not 10 million. So I just thought I'd point that out because I am interested in that house because there's this criminal case out of there that I've been watching. There are these two, Travolta doesn't just fly his own planes. He has pilots who work for him. And these two pilots who worked for him were arrested and charged with felony for conspiring to overcharge him on airplane fuel to the tune of about $750,000.
Oh, wow.
And one of the two of them hired this very clever attorney named Joe Barone, who then listed Travolta as a defense witness and wants to depose him. And she argued, look, you're accusing my client of stealing from Constellation Productions, which is Travolta's company. Travolta's the only employee, and it's in his. You're accusing him of stealing from his house. If there's somebody that knows something about this crime, it's Travolta. Well, the state attorney's office just freaked out because she not only named John Travolta, but also Jimmy Marino, who I've written about a few times as John Travolta's special friend who lives there in the house with him. And I have some very funny pictures of them. So the state attorney just freaked out. This is harassment. And Joe Barone answered that, said, how is it harassing to ask the two people that are in the house to give evidence about this crime that occurred in their house, right?
Good point.
And not only did the state attorney want to argue to get them taken off the list, they wanted the hearing to occur in private in the judge's chambers. And Joe Barone wrote this response to that saying, this is unprecedented. You can't do that in Florida. This is ridiculous. If you got something to say it, right? Well, at the last minute, I found out the state attorney canceled the hearing and backed off. And so Joe Barone still does have the right to call in John Travolta and Jimmy Marino to depose them. But right now she's filed a motion to dismiss. They're going to try to get the case kicked out. So I'm watching that. But, I have an interest in the whole Travolta household thing. And so I've been kind of fascinated about that. The other thing that came out of that was I was told that, he may not have put the Ocala house on sale, but he's not spending so much time there anymore. He and his kids have been seen in Clearwater. And as soon as I brought that up, I heard from a couple of people, no, he sold his house in Clearwater in 2021. Well, what's important to remember about Travolta is the houses he lives in are owned by something called Hawker Investment Trust, which is actually run by his sisters. So it's a family trust that buys these houses. So John's name, he doesn't want his name on the house, right? So yes, in 2021, Hawker sold its Clearwater house for $4 million. But what I just learned, has not been reported before, is only a month later, Hawker quietly bought a $1.3 million house just down the road in Bel Air.
Okay.
So, David Miscavige has asked the celebrities to move from LA to Clearwater, and a number of them have.
Yeah.
People like Michael Pena, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Travolta may be spending time in Clearwater, not 100% sure. But if he is, we know that he's got a house.
There you go.
That's it. Just a little update.
No, very interesting. I'm going to ask you conjecturally, that kid gloves treatment that John Travolta is getting without even asking from the prosecutor office, do you think that in some way related to his Scientology status and the friendly relation of the AG office with the church? Or is that a celebrity thing in general?
I'm not sure why they would be so freaked out that John Travolta and his live-in trainer would be asked to give questions about, since they're the victims of the crime, why wouldn't they be asked? It's odd that the state attorney freaked out to the level they did and then backed down. It was suggested to me they backed down because they realized it was just going to bring even more attention to the case from the press. The press has only covered this case very lightly, and definitely not in the last several months. So I don't know. You're right. It's very strange that the state's attorney was so sensitive on Travolta's behalf Does that mean Travolta was talking to them and saying, "Hey, this is not cool"? I don't know. I mean,
Or perhaps
at this point, it might be in Travolta's best interest for the motion to dismiss to succeed and dismiss the case, because
exactly.
if that motion does not succeed, I think Joe Barone's going to call in those depositions and have Travolta get under oath, and
Exactly. And
he's not going to want to do that.
well, also because if he plays by Scientology's rules when it comes to depositions, he can ask Travolta anything. I mean, they're not limited in scope when they go into deposition, and they can ask about his
Well,
relationship with this live-in trainer. He could go to
see, the
places,
thing is,
right?
the allegation is that these pilots were working out of the house, staying over, staying in guest rooms because they would have to get up early and fly Travolta somewhere, and
Mm-hmm.
that who was arranging the living arrangements? Travolta's buddy.
Right.
That's always a question. Well, what's the deposition subject? You can't ask them anything. She would specifically be asking them about their living arrangements.
Exactly. And this is the kind of thing, we've seen it in the files. We know this is exactly the kind of monitoring that OSA does. Somebody in OSA is on top of this case because John Travolta is involved with it. And so they don't always succeed. But of course, we're not going to hear about the times they do succeed at shutting things down or trying to keep things out of the press. And in OSA's mind, it would absolutely make sense with what we know to keep John's private life out of deposition, even if it costs one criminal case with some money lost over fuel. Okay, whatever. What's important here, right? Reputation, 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 because the church does play reputation management with its celebs. So just some conjecture there purely, but I just wanted to throw it out there since we've seen so much, especially in Clearwater, with government entanglements that I had to wonder about
Sure.
that. Okay, this was fun because I got to do a podcast with John this week on this. John Atack, new book. You read it? I read it. What
You and
was
I
your
both.
take on this
You and I were
this whole
both.
story?
Right. You and I were both privileged to read the pre-publication version. And I told him I loved it. I thought, listen, we're all fascinated by the strange underpinnings of Scientology and L. Ron Hubbard's days in the occult with Parsons and Crowley and all that. But he really dove into it. And what I appreciated was he went way back and followed these threads, not just Madame Blavatsky, not just Aleister Crowley, but these other crazy nuts I'd never heard of before. He had wonderful material, all the connecting threads that formed these ideas that were the underpinnings not only of Scientology ultimately and L. Ron Hubbard, but also Heinrich Himmler's crazy stuff with the Nazi movement, Nazi
Yeah,
occultism. So
yeah.
I just found that fascinating. I thought he did great work with it. And so I recommend if people, are interested in that side of Scientology, because, Scientology, they can deny it all they want, but, Hubbard's ideas come right out of his interaction with Crowleyism
Oh
and the
yeah.
cult. And look, the what was ultimately all of this stuff about Blavatsky and Crowley is that at a time in the 19th century when the sciences were more and more sort of explaining away the mysteries of the universe, and we were getting these laws of nature and we're starting to learn how things actually worked, the human being seemed to be kind of less and less to some people. I don't think that way, but that, where's the drama? Where's the grand romance? And so up as an sort of reaction to that grows this movement that says actually human beings are this incredible mystery and we have access to incredible powers if we can just remember those chants said in ancient Egypt and put those words together the right way. We're going to unleash this magic that's inside of us. I think it was just a direct reaction to how the sciences were sort of finally explaining some of the world's big mysteries to create new ones and make it seem like the human being was sitting on this incredible potential. And that's ultimately what Scientology is about. I mean, you can get kind of really caught up in the minutia of TRs and auditing and examiners and all this stuff and the ethics and all that. But really, what it all comes down to are people who wish that their lives were more important than they are, and that Scientology is going to help you remember that you were once this super important intergalactic, warlord or something, and that once you can remember doing that on other planets, you will regain these incredible superpowers. That's totally reflective of what Madame Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley were doing 100 years ago, 150 years ago. So I really hand it to John that he had the patience and the fortitude to go dig up that material and put it together in such an entertaining book. Did you like it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh no, it was great. And he and I had lots of colorful back and forths on it. I had a lot of feedback on the book as I was reading through it, and as I mentioned in the podcast, it inspired me in a lot of ways to create some of what I think is some of the better content I put out on my channel recently, diving into L. Ron Hubbard's affirmations and the Lucifer Bulletin and all of that. And that was all informed by the research that John had done and digging up and connecting some of the dots that he connected, which I had not known about or seen before, or presented new information about Blavatsky that I did not know. One little thing I'll throw out here that is, because you brought up the point of spiritualism and Blavatsky and the OTO and even the Nazis, as a reaction to scientific development, is the funny thing is that what Blavatsky and some of those other folks around that time were putting out is that their take on things, their writings and the Akashic record and, these spirits and the original races on the planet. I mean, they had like 7 different races or some shit. Beings of light and beings of water before they were, like us. That to them, they were positioning this as science also.
That's
And they were
right.
saying that science is
Yes.
wrong. We
Yes.
have the science,
That's
right?
right.
And I only bring this up because it's so funny how that turned into a faith-based, religious-based thing with how people thought about it coming into the 20th century. So what does L. Ron Hubbard do? He calls his version of all of this Scientology and brings the whole theme back that this is science-based. It's not faith-based. Even after he takes the religion angle, he still doubles down on Scientology, the science of certainty, in the
Yeah.
same theme. So when you're wondering, what is he taking from back then? In a way, all of it, and just repackages it into Scientology in interesting ways. So it's fun stuff. Thanks for that was a great article you wrote on that one, and John's book is it's a wild read, man. I'm telling you, you got to get that thing just to dive down that rabbit hole. It is wild. All right, so finally we are wrapping up this week with the last big story, which is a continuation of the lawsuits that Priscilla Presley is finding herself wrapped up in, and it's as I was telling Tony before the show, it's starting to develop in my mind the idea that maybe, just possibly, Priscilla Presley might not be a really nice person.
Oh boy, I tell you,
Hmm.
I was fortunate. I actually got to break the news that Priscilla was being sued by her former business partner at the Daily Beast a year and a half ago. And then about earlier this year, February, I had gotten a chance to talk to this Brigitte Cruz, who had filed this lawsuit, and she shared with me some of the stuff that she's working on, and she let me know I'm going to be, as long as Priscilla keeps accusing me of things, I got to prove that I am who I say I am, and that I was part of their lives and everything. I got to prove this by showing people things. So I've just been waiting to see what she was going to do. And wow, this last month has been incredible. She filed this new lawsuit in LA last month, $50 million lawsuit, where she accused Priscilla of taking Lisa Marie off life support before Riley could get there. And while Lisa had signed a directive not to have, to keep her alive at all costs. And I think why this lawsuit has caused such an eruption in the press is that it's not just Brigitte Cruz alleging this or saying, I heard this. She puts a copy of Lisa's directive in the lawsuit as an exhibit. And on that point, I want to be kept alive. It's LMP, exclamation point, exclamation point. Oh my God. You can see how strongly Lisa felt about it. And so I think the fact that she's making these stunning allegations, but she's backing it up with these exhibits, because not all complaints when they first come in have exhibits attached to them. The amended complaint that came in this week has 40 of them,
Ooh.
including some pages that were leaked of Priscilla's book that's coming out in a couple weeks, where she talks about taking Lisa off life support while Riley was still on the plane on the way, you know, and other evidence. But the thing that really rocked everybody this week was there's a letter in there that Riley wrote to Priscilla a couple days after Lisa had died, and it just reflects the chaos in that family about, that Priscilla was now suing Riley, and Riley was saying that Lisa had wanted to sue Priscilla and she talked her out of it. I mean, just the turmoil and dysfunction in that family laid bare in this document. Again, it's not somebody alleging it, it's not an unnamed source claiming it. It's right there in front of you. You can read it yourself. So I wanted to put that in a little bit of context because the letter, the thing that I really was interested in is the letter talks about how in 2016 there was this major falling out between Lisa and her mom, Priscilla. Well, it was just the year before, 2015, when I had my long conversation with Lisa, and we
Mhm.
talked about her leaving Scientology. And, in October 2014, she'd tried to have a showdown with David Miscavige at the Flag Land Base. He chickened out and sent his sisters. She was still fuming about it. We talked about it for a long time on the phone. And I asked her about, her mom and her daughter, her sister. I mean, her daughter and her mom. And Lisa said, Lisa made it very clear. She's out. She's totally out of Scientology now. It's early 2015. She's completely done. She said, I told my mom and my daughter, Priscilla and Riley, they have to come out with me. I need their support. And she made it sound 2015 like she'd succeeded. They were all three out. Well, the next year, 2016, was this major falling out. And apparently it was over the fact that at that point, Lisa realized that Priscilla was really messing up with their finances. And so Lisa had the Promenade Trust rewritten to make her own kids the trustees and cut her mom out. And that started at the little World War III going on inside the family. And I just wonder, I can't help wondering, was Scientology part of that mix? Because I never got to talk to Lisa again. I was really worried about her. I know she was going through that really bitter divorce with Michael Lockwood, and she was also. I had heard that she'd fallen back into drug use. Apparently, that's true. Um, was she getting sucked back into Scientology? Because in 2015, I can tell you, she made it sound like she would never go back. But I was pretty sure that Priscilla had, and we see more and more evidence of it. The biggest evidence is when Sofia Coppola's movie Priscilla came out about Priscilla's life, dramatizing it. Sofia Coppola did sit down with Priscilla to have a little interview for publicity for the movie, and you can see in the video Priscilla's wearing her Scientology cross.
Yep.
That's 2 years ago, Chris.
Yep.
So, the whole thing is just such a sad disaster. Now, Brigitte Cruz claims with her documents that Priscilla drove Elvis Presley to an early grave, took her daughter off life support, and was doing it because she didn't want to get sued. She wanted to get control of Graceland, things like that. It's really the National Enquirer, and I don't usually quote the National Enquirer, Chris, but the National Enquirer last week on their cover called this claim about taking Lisa off life support the most shocking claim in Hollywood history.
It's pretty bad.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty bad because you can interpret that a number of horrible and even criminal ways.
Wow.
Right.
So
And
I'm just trying to keep. I'm very grateful that I got to break that story initially a year and a half ago. I'm not on the leading edge anymore. I'm just a spectator like everybody else. But I think it is worth keeping an eye on as we see how that develops. And I think at this point, Scientology is really not a part of that lawsuit at all. But I think it will be eventually. Some stuff about Scientology will come out. So I'm going to keep an eye on it.
absolutely. We definitely need to keep our eye on this, especially because Priscilla keeps demonstrating how she is a Scientologist, as we've talked about before. You just simply don't run around with a Scientology cross on. It's a unique symbol. And of course, meet with other OT Scientologists if you're in
Well,
bad
yeah, when she
standing.
was meeting with Gottfried Helnwein in
Hmm.
Austria, I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. Well, he's a famous artist. They're old friends. Doesn't really mean she's in Scientology. But then I saw that cross
Yeah,
around her
no.
neck. I'm like, oh yeah, she's hanging out with Gottfried because they're Scientologists.
Absolutely. And you know, it's not singular to Priscilla and Lisa Marie that, you know, a Scientologist mother chooses Scientology over her own kids. That is unfortunately a tragic outcome of Scientology again and again and again and again, is it breaks up families. Um, I don't even know what to say about the accusation about Elvis. I'm not, you know, okay, just have your day in court on that one. I'm not touching it. But I will say that, you know, for a group that says that its tagline is improving conditions in life, I don't exactly see Priscilla's life like, you know, all green flags and roses and butterflies. You know, this is pretty bad, pretty nasty stuff. And Priscilla is accused of some really nasty stuff.
Yep.
And, you know, do I believe a Scientologist could get up to that stuff? Of course I do. I've seen him do it. Um, okay. Well, Tony, thank you very much for all of that. Very interesting week, even if, you know, an end of, you know, summer, whatever kind of week that we're in right now, rolling into autumn. Speaking of rolling into, any sort of advance notice on what's coming up?
I mean, all of these lawsuits are held up, and there's supposed to be some new briefs coming in, but it's going to be a little while, so I'm not sure what'll break loose this week. But I'll be keeping an eye on the dockets.
All right, folks. Well, you'll hear it here. In fact, there is the address right there again for Tony's Substack. Go to it, get your subscription, get your notifications each day, and then check back in with us, as we say, on Monday for the summarization wrap up. Okay. See you guys soon. Tony, again, thank you very much, and bye bye.